Hey, how's it going everybody? My name is Artorigold and today I'd like to go over Sigma. I think Sigma is a really fun tank hero that can do a lot of damage and he has a lot of potential, and I think a lot of people are out there having fun with him just like I am. So in this VOD review, I kind of want to talk a little bit about his abilities and what tanks he's good with, what kind of like team comps are good against him, and what you kind of want to try and do with all of your abilities. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about with Sigma are the tanks that you want to pair up with Sigma. I don't think Roadhog is the best. I think Zarya is very good because you can bubble him and you can be very aggressive, and that's kind of what you want to be with Sigma. He does a lot of damage and you kind of want to work towards your ultimate as soon as possible because your ultimate is really overpowered. And having a team comp that allows for you to be as aggressive as possible, such as with maybe a Lucio for the speed boost, or maybe even a Zenyatta Discord Orb to make your left clicks hit even harder than they already do, or a Zarya because she can bubble you is also very strong. Something that's also weirdly good is double barrier. So I've seen a lot of people use Orisa with Sigma, and that's pretty effective because you can basically have your barriers kind of work together. Like whenever your shield breaks, Orisa can put up hers and then you can recharge it, and you kind of just alternate between the barriers. And another thing about that, because of roll lock being introduced, the double barriers are very difficult for enemy teams to break through, because you're pretty much limited to only 2 DPS heroes to shoot at it. Without roll lock, you basically could swap the triple DPS and go like crazy shield break comps, but that doesn't really exist anymore, so you don't really have that strategy available. So having a double barrier strategy is actually pretty effective. I would, however, prefer an Orisa over a Reinhardt, just because the shield being on a cooldown is very effective, as opposed to the Reinhardt, who kind of still needs a speed boost to really get in there. So those are my thoughts on what tanks are really good. Healers, any healer really kind of works well. Ana, even Moira's pretty good. I really prefer to have like a Zenyatta because the Discord Orb really helps your left clicks hit really hard. If you have a Zarya on your team, I would prefer to have a Lucio because that way I can be really aggressive. So first things first, I want to talk a little bit about maybe your rock. Your rock stuns people, it knocks them down, and it does a ton of damage, and it can pretty much go like really far as long as you kind of aim it upwards. It's kind of a very large projectile hitbox, so you need to make sure that it doesn't hit a shield, it doesn't hit anything on, just on the map in general, because it is a very powerful ability and it will be kind of wasted if you just shoot at a shield with it. So one of the best things you want to use it for is for peeling. If you know you can guarantee a rock on an enemy, then that generally means that you can follow up with your left click, and that's going to basically allow for you to just kill a squishy hero outright. I would like to talk about this ultimate usage as well. So let's talk about this fight a little bit. So as you can see, we're kind of pushing the payload here, and I'm putting my shield out so it kind of just blocks anybody from just shooting in this doorway. One of the reasons why that's really good in this situation is because the enemy team has a double sniper, so they have Hanzo and Widowmaker. And as you can kind of see right here, I don't know if you can see it as well as me, but there's a Widowmaker right here. And so by putting your shield in front of this doorway, she is pretty much completely useless, and she's not able to get any shots off. And as we know with double sniper, any one shot is a potential one shot. So you basically just lose a team member for free if they make that shot. So one of the fun things about your shield, because you're able to just push it forward, you can put it in front of that Widowmaker. It's going to be a headache for her, and she's going to have to reposition, and she's not going to be very effective. So onto the fight. As you can see, the kind of shield over here is not very effective by the Sigma. It was kind of a panic shield because my Roadhog hooked him. And because of that, the Hanzo is completely left unguarded. So your rock has a little bit, I don't know if it's like a second, maybe less than a second of like a build up or charge before you're able to fire it. So you want to make sure that it's going to be a guaranteed rock. And one of the great things here, obviously this Hanzo is completely wide open. There's no protection by like the dumpster or trash can here. So a rock is going to be pretty much a free knockdown on him. Yeah, so he got a Zarya bubble, you can kind of see it, and not only was the Zarya bubble there to protect him, I believe the Brig used her flail to kind of hit me out of the direction here, but normally, without this Zarya bubble and without that flail, I would have killed that Hanzo. If you land a rock on a squishy hero and follow it up with just one simple left click, they will die. It's pretty insane how good the damage is, unless they're getting healed or, you know, like a bubble in that instance, or if you get knocked out of your range. It's pretty ridiculous. So one of the things here, your ultimate, I'd like to talk about it a little bit. Obviously, it's probably best used when you can get as many people in it. It's very similar to how you want to play with Graviton. Sigma's ultimate is pretty unique. There's a couple of things that I think everybody should know about it. I mean, obviously you can fly around with it for a while, which is pretty good to get yourself into maybe like the high ground positions. So if you really wanted to, you can actually use your flying to maybe position yourself somewhere on a high ground, which could be kind of useful if there's maybe someone on there such as a Widowmaker or something, and you can pretty much contest her or force her off of that high ground with her grapple. So obviously one thing about this is you want to get as many people as possible. You can combo abilities with it. For example, if you have a Zarya, you could let the Zarya Graviton them all together and then use your Flux on them once they're grouped up, or it could be kind of the reverse situation where you get a bunch of people and then as soon as they get slammed to the ground, then you can use your ult onto, or the Zarya can use her Graviton to finish them off if they aren't already dead. One of the cool things about this is when enemies are slammed down onto the ground, I don't know if everybody knows this, but the damage dealt to them is equivalent to 50% of their maximum health, which is very devastating against any tanks. So if you're able to just focus on whatever the enemy tank combo is, so if they have tanks that are just not dying, such as a Sigma or Zarya in this instance, then they are going to go down pretty quickly. And one of the things is you can use your flying to get into a position where you're immediately able to follow up and get the kills on them when they land if they aren't dead. One big thing to note about this ability is if there is an Orisa, she can use Fortify so it doesn't affect her, and that's pretty much the only thing you really have to worry about. Other than that, it's very easy to hit enemies that don't have mobility moves. So obviously in this instance, the Sigma can't get away, the Brig can't get away, and the Zarya, they have no options, no mobility moves, so they are stuck in it, and it is very easy to kind of secure these kills. Another thing, you can use your left click and shoot, I think just one time. You basically only have time to do one shot. See right here, I do one shot, and before I can do another shot, really, they kind of slam on the ground. And it's kind of hard to hit them. You can try to go for a second shot and maybe you'll get lucky, but generally I've only been able to get really just one good shot on enemies while they are stuck in that air. Another cool thing that you could do, which is a little bit harder to do, but it is possible, when enemies get lifted into the air, if it's a more like bunker team composition, for example, if the enemy has a Bastion, this is my depiction of a Bastion. It's not the best drawing, I know that. But my point is that if Bastion is in a turret form, he will still get lifted up. So Sigma Ultimate can be a very effective counter against Bunker and Bastion team comps because you can lift the Bastion into the air and slam them, do a bunch of damage, and you can get yourself set up to kill that Bastion. And also your Rock, if you're able to hit the Bastion with it, it stuns him out of the turret form. So Sigma is very effective at dealing with Bastion team comps. If you don't know what to do, just make sure to stay on Sigma and just build towards that ultimate. You're just going to have to play slow, get a lot of ult charge as much as possible, and then just kind of wait it out, and then as a group, push in on the Bastion, use the Sigma ult, and you can win off that team fight. So in this situation, we're obviously able to get really aggressive, and that's exactly what you want to do with your ultimate. Even if you're not able to kill like everybody, make sure that your team is able to go in with you. One thing with Sigma that I don't know if people have noticed is he doesn't have armor. You know, he only has the blue barrier or shield similar to Zarya, which is really good because you can heal that up over time. But because you are lacking armor and you only have 400 health, it makes you very vulnerable, and you're pretty easy to kill actually, so you have to be pretty careful. You have no damage mitigation from the armor, so you basically just want to make sure to play aggressive, but also know when you have to back off, and you kind of want to save your shift for those moments. So one of the cool things about Sigma is your shift is essentially your defensive, and it's kind of like defense matrix from D.Va. It can be stunned from things like an enemy Sigma can throw a rock at it and you can cancel it. But it pretty much eats ultimates, and you can kind of go for those kind of plays. However, it is much more difficult to do that. But the more interesting thing about it is after your shift is done, depending on how many things kind of like shoot at you, all of that gets like absorbed and you get bonus shields. So you're pretty good at staying alive under pressure. If any enemies kind of just really shoot at you, then you're going to become like, I don't know, like 600, 700 health. I don't really know what the cap or limit is on it, but it's pretty crazy. So if a Bastion just uses it, or maybe you have someone that can't stop their ultimate like a Roadhog ultimate, you can eat pretty much all of that, and then you have a ton of health that just come out on top and do whatever you want to do. Another quick little note I'd like to talk about right here is you notice how they have the Sigma Orisa like double barrier here. It's very difficult for you to kind of deal with that, and you really can't spend too much time left click shooting at those shields. You're not going to do a whole lot of damage to it. You're not going to break through with it. One of the things that we've noticed as a community, however, is that Symmetra can just stand still and left click on the shields, and her beam is going to get charged up really quickly. And also because when Symmetra shoots at a shield, she just kind of like gets ammo. She actually doesn't have to reload, and the damage gets increased. Symmetra is kind of slowly becoming this thing that stops double barrier, which is interesting. I don't know how long that's going to last because they are going to nerf her on the PTR. It might still be very effective on there, however, we're not really sure. Also, one thing about the shift that I'd like to talk about is, although it is a very powerful ability, it doesn't stop beam effects. So if Symmetra is shooting you or a Zarya is shooting you with a laser, it's going to do damage. Same thing with a melee attack. So it's pretty difficult to play against a double barrier as Sigma if you don't have a double barrier of your own. Or some way to counter it. Another thing that people have been doing is they've actually been picking up Doomfist, because Doomfist doesn't care about barriers, and Doomfist is able to just punch people past it, and that's kind of been pretty effective. I think the meta with Rollock and Sigma, just so many different things have happened recently, right? We've had the new Rollock system, we've had a new hero, some pretty big buffs and nerfs, and the patch all around has been changing the meta around to a way where the community is still trying to figure out what exactly to do. And it's a pretty exciting time. I think Sigma is extremely powerful in overtime situations, especially because of how powerful your ultimate is. And I kind of wanted to give a good example of that. As you can see in this 6v6 fight here, I want to go over it a little bit. My Widowmaker gets picked immediately, so it's actually a 5v6 with us at a disadvantage, and it's overtime. So it's pretty crucial that we win this fight. And I'm very close to my ultimate, and that's all I'm about to do. And as you can see here, the Hammond is trying to spin around, as Hammond usually does in an overtime situation. It can work most of the time. However, as Sigma, your rock is very effective at just stopping and peeling and making sure that that gets shut down really quickly. And as soon as you get your ultimate, you kind of just want to use it on the payload. As you can see in this situation, the overtime ultimate is very powerful, and everybody's basically forced to be on the payload, so you're able to get very large ultimates where you're able to get a bunch of people, get some left clicks on them, basically just cleans up the fight super easily, and it's probably one of the better ultimates in an overtime situation. I think May's Blizzard and your ultimate are probably the most effective things that you can use to win in an overtime situation. There really isn't much the enemy can do unless they have a defensive ult. If the enemy team has a Zenyatta Trans or a Lucio Beat, they might be able to kind of survive this, but most teams, they're gonna die. There's really nothing they can do about it. I mean, the enemy team's running like Mercy, Brig, Anna, Moira. There is not going to be enough to keep their team alive or keep themselves alive. So if there's ever a situation where the enemy team is going to be in overtime on a payload map, make sure to choose Sigma. He is very strong. If you can get a DPS player to pick May and just work towards Blizzard, you will win the payload fight for free with those ultimates. Just play very safe, passively, build towards those ultimates and use them together on the payload, and you will win the game. Anyways, guys, that's all I have for today. Hopefully you guys enjoy Sigma. Get out there and play him. He's a really fun hero and very rewarding hero to play. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time.